Our power panel Democratic strategist and former Bill Clinton pollster Bernard Whitman is here. Rich Lowry, editor of the National Review and a Fox News contributor too. Let's start with taxes, because in the next little while we are going to see something that makes history.
Yeah, this has to be a really gratifying moment for Paul Ryan, because the Republican House majority for years has been completely dysfunctional and borderline ungovernable. And this has happened incredibly quickly, incredibly smoothly. So like with Obamacare repeal, it'll be another item where the House has done its job, and then the question's the Senate.
You know, what's interesting, too, Bernard, is that you saw the president today go. It wasn't to whip the vote count, potentially. He can't do that. But what he can do is motivate everybody to move forward.
Yes, and I mean, and Rich sets out exactly what the problem is. The problem is going to be in the Senate. Ron Johnson's already said he's not going to vote for it, which leaves a margin of
for it the way it is now.
And there's a good reason for that, because the American people aren't buying the fact that they're going to get a tax cut. If you actually look at the most recent poll, it's a YouGov poll. 12% of the American people thought they'd get a tax cut. 51% of the American people thought Donald Trump would get a tax cut. And the reason is that in a few short years under the GOP plan in the Senate, taxes start rising on those making $10,000 to $30,000. A few years after that, taxes start rising on those making $30,000 to $75,000. But taxes, for some reason, on those making over $100,000 continue. Corporate tax rates are permanent. These tax rates for the middle class are ephemeral. That is not right, and the American people understand that they're likely not going to see the benefit that Paul Ryan is suggesting.
There's a really important policy reason for why it's structured that way, or why they want to make the corporate rates permanent and aren't so worried about the individual side, is because corporations make business decisions on really long time frames. So if you have these tax cuts even theoretically expiring in 10 years on the corporate side, that's a problem in terms of boosting corporate investment. And the bet Republicans are making is on the individual side, no one is going to actually repeal these tax cuts when push comes to shove.
All right. A couple of elements having not anything to do with corporations but individuals. Those 7 tax brackets, people were looking forward to those being squeezed back down to 4 potentially, as we saw. And in one of the bills, it wouldn't be that way, which means you can't do it on an app and you can't do it on a postcard. That's a broken promise right there, or do you think they can reconcile that?
You know, President Trump's been very forthright about this. It's a tax cut. It's not tax reform. They're making reforms around the margins, but it's mostly a tax cut. And the changes we're seeing in the Senate are also ensuring that more middle-class families will get tax cuts.
They're voting right now, and how they vote makes a difference in everyone's lives in America. We're watching it. Stay close. We're right back. I want to bring in my power panel now, Rich Lowry and Bernard Whitman. Rich, as we watch this, we're watching for the first time history being made. I put it that way because this is the detail of talk that we're having on taxes, not since 1986 when Ronald Reagan was president.
Yeah, so, and they had votes to spare in the House. Now you go in the Senate where you can only lose 3. And that's what undid Obamacare repeal, and it's going to be close in the Senate. But ultimately, I think just being one of 3 to stand up and stop an initiative that everyone believes the fortunes of the party in the midterm elections so depend on this is going to be really difficult. So someone like Ron Johnson has problems with the current form. Will he stand up and be one of the 3 to block this and really harm the party? I doubt it.
So what I hear you saying is, because that's what happened previously with Obamacare, but the stakes were not what they are right now. They're
right,
very,
because
very
this is happening against the backdrop of that failure, so it makes it even more important to get this done.
All right, the balance of power then was also something that Democrats were concerned about with Bob Menendez, and you see, typically, I mean, he can go back to work unless the government wants to come back to him. It doesn't necessarily touch this situation unless you get some Republicans who vote no in the Senate.
And I think it's not about standing up for the American people. It's about standing up for their party. The Republicans are desperate to score a win, and unfortunately, the House Speaker, I congratulate him for hoodwinking the American people, selling this as a tax cut, when in fact it is a corporate tax giveaway and a massive tax and financial redistribution to the wealthy. If you actually look at the details here, 2/3 of those who need a tax cut the most, who make under $30,000, are getting either no tax cut or actually a tax increase. The idea that this is a middle-class tax cut is a farce that has been played on the American people, and they're not buying it.
I'm going to step in there because we're going to run out of real estate. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here. Notwithstanding all of what you think, Bernard, the fact of the matter is that the House just passed this. They didn't need Democrats to do anything, 227 to 205.